Could use one of those.
What was the most disappointing thing to you about how the defense played Saturday, and how fixable is that?
Probably the most disappointing thing was the inability to stop the run. We knew going into the game that would have to be a priority, and we weren't able to do that consistently. I feel like there were some times, if you look at the first quarter, that we played well. We stopped the run. We got them into passing scenarios that we had hoped to get them in. But consistently, we didn't do a very good job of that. So that was disappointing. And then we needed to stop 87. We needed to stop their tight end. And going in, we felt like we had a good plan to do that, and we didn't execute it all the time to get it done. And those were really the two kind of lead-in goals going into the game. And we didn't get that done. So we have to pull from some of the positives from the game. But obviously, the performance is underwhelming from our defense. We know that. So we got to do a better job coaching, and we got to do a better job playing. And we just got to keep moving forward. And we feel like at one point it's going to come together and click. But right now we're struggling, and we know that. The players know it, and coaches know it, and that's where we are. But realistically, we still feel good about being able to put it all together, and it's just a matter of time before we get that done.
Up front specifically, is there something that they're not doing in the fundamental sense? Is it physicality? What is something that they can maybe adjust here in the coming weeks, and what are maybe some things that are going to take a lot longer?
Well, I think it's kind of when you look at the run game, when it's not clicking, I think it's kind of a mixture. Sometimes it's one guy out of a gap, so it all comes together with the defensive line fitting and staying in their gaps. The linebackers and safeties, or whoever are responsible for fitting those gaps, everybody fits those gaps accordingly. So one guy can be out, and one guy can jump his gap or be out of his gap, and that really allows poor defensive performance when it comes to the run game. But sometimes it's physicality. Sometimes it's a guy out of his gap. Sometimes it's a pressure on that somebody's going to have to overlap and account for a potential open gap somewhere else in the defense, and we don't overlap. So there's several things, all fixable, but I think to answer your question, it's a mixture of things.
Gene, you and Mac have both said that the defense is improving week to week. What are some telltale signs that you look for in practice, like checkpoints that they have to hit each week to show that improvement?
Well, I think in practice, I got to give the guys a lot of credit. Every practice, even including yesterday, everybody goes out there with a purpose, and everybody goes out there, and we see improvement. We do. In practice, things slow down a little bit, so you can talk through some things, you can correct things that are not right. Their attitude's great. They continue to practice really, really well. And I do see some areas of improvement. I think Saturday, I think our corners played better, and we struggled there some earlier in the season. So we're seeing some spots where practice is carrying over to the games. Do we see that as a total defense all the time? No, we don't. And that's probably the most frustrating part. And I think everybody's frustrated. I think sometimes the players get frustrated, sometimes the coaches get frustrated. But everybody's on the same page. Everybody's continuing to work. And in practice, I've been really proud of these guys, because every practice they come out there to improve and get better. And we feel like that going into the game. And then, obviously every week we got to recalibrate and readjust and go back and do it again. And they did a good job of that yesterday as well.
Can you point to one of your defenses in the past where it's kind of, as you said, underwhelmed through the first 4 weeks of the season, but there has been that point where it did click for them?
I mean, I can't think back that far. I mean, the bottom line is we can't compare this to anything else in the past. This is a different team. It's a different era. It's a different There's just a lot of difference. You know, you can't go back and say, well, you know, when you were here the first time, it was different. So we have to continue to adapt and adjust to what we see the problems are. And we got to continue to do that on a consistent basis. As I said earlier, I truly believe that it's going to click, and we're going to get the game that we want to get, and that means consistency. Right now, we haven't got it. So every day is a work in progress with the coaches. Every day is a work in progress with the players. But one thing that is great and 100% true is everybody's all in, and we're all in this together. And we as a group understand that nobody's been happy with any of these performances. But that's what football is, right? You got to man up and go out there every day and try to improve and get better. And as long as everybody's in on that, then we'll always have a chance to improve, and we will improve.
Mac mentioned a disconnect and kind of backed off that word a little bit. Why do you think maybe what's happening in practices and even from the spring and preseason hasn't translated to any sort of improvement across 4 games? I'm going to repeat a lot of things you've said already, I'm sure.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, is there something that's not clicking with players or scheme or something that is just not getting much better each game?
Well, again, I think it's kind of isolated, right? We're playing a lot of the same defense. We are adjusting as well. But it's one guy, you know, in defense, in run defense, everybody's responsible for a gap. In pass defense, everybody's responsible in coverage, right? If it's zone coverage, you have the people in your zone that you're covering that you're responsible for. It's man coverage, it's obvious you have a man. And what's happening is there's isolated incidents that keep popping up where one guy is not necessarily doing his job, but 10 others are. That's what's kind of the frustrating part in the repeat offending or repeat offenders, not that it's on a guy or a group, it's kind of everybody. So us as coaches, that's our job to really look at our groups and look at our segments of players and figure out why this is happening and where the disconnect is, that on game day we can't necessarily see it. Now, on game day we do sometimes get some different things than we prepared for, but that's football, right? You have to be able to adapt and adjust to those on game day. And sometimes we've been good at that and sometimes we haven't. So you can't put it on a player or a position. It starts with us as coaches, me first, to be able to get these things done and pass down to our guys so that we can play consistently. And that's not happening at a very good rate right now. So we're working day and night to fix those issues. And I feel very confident we can get it done.
And then in terms of asking Coach Brown about this, you like to bring 4 to get pressure on the quarterback. Max said y'all blitzed a lot on Saturday. I've gone back and looked at all the blitz packages. I was wondering your philosophy on that. Like, if you're not getting pressure 4, I mean, how many times did y'all blitz? What's wrong with this blitz? It's not getting there if you are blitzing. And then the philosophy of dropping 7 versus 4, bringing 5 and dropping 6. Like, your philosophy on
Right.
getting pressure on the quarterback and making that happen when you do bring it.
Right. Well, number one, bringing pressure on a quarterback has to do with a couple of different things. How are they in protection? How is the quarterback when he actually is getting pressure in his face with those type of blitzes? And then how are you in coverage? How do you feel about holding up in the secondary versus the opponent's receiver? So, you know, all of that goes together. There's not really a cookie cutter, I believe in bringing 7, I believe in bringing 6. I believe in bringing pressure on downs where you feel like it can affect the quarterback and you can get off the field. We did do more of it Saturday. There's a couple times when I thought the pressures were there. He got rid of the ball fast. There was a couple times when the pressure got home. There was a couple times when we ran a pressure and there was somebody out of place and we got a quarterback scramble and he got out of the pocket when we had everything covered. So again, that kind of goes back to, you know, even when you pressure and you blitz, right? Like there's a guy that's always responsible to make sure that the quarterback is contained. If he doesn't do that job and the quarterback gets out of the pocket, then he has time to, you know, readjust to whatever the coverage is. So that happened Saturday. So, but philosophically, we know right now we're not getting a lot of pressure. And I'm good with pressuring as long as I feel like we can hold up in the back end, and we have a chance to possibly get something home or get some pressure in the guy's face that will actually affect him. So that's, you know, when you go into every game, that's what you look at, right? How much do we pressure? Does it really affect him? How good is the offensive line in protection? And then you kind of formulate that plan from there.
Gene, there's a lot of experts out there.
Really?
Apparently so. Who seem to, you know, believe blowing it up would be a solution. I'm not sure what that means, but you know, do you find yourself feeling like maybe you should try to shake up some personnel in certain spots? I mean, you know, we've seen more of Travis Shaw, we've seen more of Will Hardy. I mean, it just for you, you know, personally, do you start talking to yourself about that or think about that? Like let's I know you're putting the guys out there you think are their best players. I understand that, but like, I mean, is maybe shaking up the personnel in some spots something to look at?
You know, that's a very fair question, to be honest with you. You know, when you go through times of struggle in anything, sometimes there's a tendency for people to start wanting to, you know, just recreate and reinvent. And in maybe some things in life that works. In football, it doesn't necessarily work that way. We have to believe in what we're doing. We have to believe in our players. We have to believe in schematically that there can be tweaks and adjustments in there, both schematically and with personnel, to your point, right? That gives us a chance to be, I guess, more consistent. But I'm not one of these guys that looks at the final results and then says, oh my gosh, nobody's ever right. Everybody's wrong, because that's not what's happening. It's our job as coaches right now to make sure that we be realistic. Nobody's happy with the performance, players or coaches, right? But in the same sense, we're almost in the middle of the season. So looking at other guys that can contribute, obviously that's obviously always a valid point, right? Who can help us? Who's coming along in practice as we evaluate them to feel like we can put them on the field and they can help us. So all of those things are true, but I'm just never going to be that guy that I'm not happy with the results, so let's blow it up, start over. I think that's unrealistic. I think it's better to tweak, continue to try to stay on a consistent track to get the product we want. We want the product to look like the first quarter looked. I mean, that's the bottom line, and we know we have it in us. We believe in the players that we can get that done. Has it happened yet? No, it has not. But like I said, we're going to keep working to make sure that the consistency is eventually there, and it's not. But as far as starting all over and just knee-jerk reaction and trying to do all these different things that I'm sure everybody out there has great answers to, that's good. And when they have this job, they can do that. But I've got this job right now. So I'm going to do it the way I see fit. And football's a crazy game, like I told the defense yesterday. When you sign up for this, you sign up for all the ugly parts, right? Good, bad, and ugly, and that's where we're at. So we got to fix it. That's what men do. We go back, we look at the problems, and we try to fix them. And it's not on the players, it's not on the coaches, it's on all of us, and it starts with me. And I've got to make these decisions to get it fixed. So everything lies with me, and then it goes down from there. So again, I feel very confident we can get this done. I think consistency is the main event, but blowing everything up and starting over with both either personnel or scheme is not an option.
Just as a quick follow-up there, I always think about you mentioning, I think it was in the summer, in terms of the defensive line, just the bodies, the size, and the different pieces you have to work there. In terms of production on the defensive line, is that an area that has disappointed you, just the production, what they've been able to, I'm not saying like individual guys or personalities or whatever, but what they've been able to produce and not produce, is that a disappointment for you?
Let me just say this. I'll never put that on a segment, because when you play poor defense, it's disappointing in general. And you can't point to a group that at times is not disappointing. Do we need more production on the defensive line? Yeah. We need more production at linebacker. We need more production at safety. We need more production at jack. We need more production at corner. So we need more production everywhere. But I don't think there's any segment on our defense right now where the coach of that segment, me, or that segment feels like they've arrived. Everybody's got to play better. Everybody's got to be more productive. That's the bottom line. So that's our charge, starting with me, and we got to get them there.
What expectations do you have for this defense against Virginia Tech, and have you guys set any specific goals for Saturday?
Well, we haven't really talked about that. We're still in the mix of evaluating and assessing Virginia Tech. I expect us to play much better Saturday. We spent a lot of time yesterday going back over the film and looking at all the minute details again of when we weren't good, why, and I expect us to play much better Saturday against Virginia Tech. We've had 4 games to look at a lot of things. We've had 4 games to evaluate some poor performances, but we've also had a time to evaluate when we were playing well and we were playing good, why. So we spent a lot of time on that yesterday, went out and practiced, we put that game behind us. The good news is we're 3-1 going into conference play, and our guys have not lost confidence. Our guys are 100% all in meetings and practice every day. And I'm proud of them for that, because if you listen to the outside chatter that I'm sure is out there, young guys could get discouraged, but I don't think our guys are, at least not when they're in this building. And, that's hard to control, but they know where we have to go. They know where we are. They know what it takes to get to where we need to get. And I feel like Saturday we'll play much better.
Coach Chizik, what was your conversations like with Coach Brown Saturday night and yesterday? You two were getting together, trying to figure things out. Obviously, I'm more together.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had plenty of conversations like this, so I was wondering what the one coming off Notre Dame was like.
Well, the coach is very disappointed, like we all are. We have conversations about what's next, how we're going to fix it. He's frustrated, rightly so. I've been in his seat. I've known him for a long time, and he expects more, and he should get more, and we're not giving him what he deserves and what the University of North Carolina deserves as far as results on defense. We're not giving him that right now. And again, that falls on me, and I'm a big boy and I can handle it. And so we have some very candid conversations about where this is going and what we need to do. Again, I'm not going to say that there's a sense of panic whatsoever, but there's very candid conversations about how this is going to get better, and we can do that because we've been in this a long time not a long time together. We've been in this a long time, and we've previously been together. So I think it's just, I think it's frustrating, and I feel responsible to get this thing turned around for Mack Brown and for University of North Carolina, and that's what the conversations are. There's no magic. There's no, of course we talk personnel, which is an obvious discussion, right? We talk scheme. We talk what happened. We talk inconsistency. We talk all the things that you guys see. And we have very candid conversations about it, and we always will. But he's frustrated, and rightly so.
Are there certain things he's like, we need to stop this, we can do more of this? Is there particular things he points out that he stresses?
Well, yeah, obviously stopping the run. That's probably been the most frustrating part, is that we haven't been able to have the ability to consistently stop the run. That's the number one thing that he stresses and that I stress and that we talk about together. How are we going to stop the run? Because we haven't been able to do that on a consistent basis. So that's the first discussion that him and I usually have on Sundays.
How do you kind of guard against the frustration
You know, football's a crazy game, and it's really interesting. Guys want to win. Guys want to win. They put in a lot to win, and then sometimes, you know, you see some frustration boil over. I don't think it's really any different than in your family, right? You know, one of the things that our guys absolutely, truly do is they love each other. That doesn't mean they all hang out with each other on the weekends, but I think they truly love each other and respect each other as competitors, and they all want to win. And when you're not doing as well as you had hoped, sometimes those things happen, just like they happen in my own family with my daughters and my sons, right? But you move forward and you get past that because there's truly a true high level of care and trust and love for each other in there. That's what makes coaching these guys so fun for me, because they really do that. You're going to see that happen. It happens with coaches. I'm not saying it happen with coaches on the sideline. I'm not saying it happened with us. I'm just saying you see that in the competitive world of sports, right? But one thing I can confidently say is that it's our job as leaders to make sure when things aren't going well, and I'm just talking about defense, I'm talking about on teams. When you're a coach of a team, whatever your position is, right? Your job as a leader is to make sure that through tough times and chaos and bad times, that those things don't happen. And so I feel really good about that. I think you can see some brush ups here and there. We see them in practice. They happen in practice when there's not everything on the line, right? But that's kind of football. That's what happens. But there's not going to be any finger pointing. There's not going to be any. You can't. I mean, if you want to start pointing fingers, you can point fingers at every single human involved, right? So that's not a realistic deal. But I think our guys have really handled all of this very well. And the fact that there's a brush up here and there, you know, that happens. But we have absolutely zero concern about that.
Did you talk with Taylor or Grimes or sit down or anything from y'all's side to figure that out?
Well, we handled that in the locker room. We handled that afterwards, and it was nothing. It was absolutely nothing.
In 5 quarters, opponents have at least 10 or more first downs in 5 different quarters. There's sort of a snowball thing. Do you sense a snowball effect with these guys? Can that become psychological, or what is the remedy for that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We notice that, you know, when we're playing well and we're getting off the field and doing things like that, it's really, really good. Then all of a sudden, you know, they get a first down, and then they hit a big run, and it seems like there has been somewhat of a cumulative effect with that. And that's where we got to drop the anchor and stop some of these, right? And, you know, that's kind of been the MO. We do well, and then all of a sudden something happens and there's a couple first downs and they hit a big play. And that's where we have to step up. We have to understand that, you know, on those type of drives, somebody's got to make a play. There's something good that's got to happen. But it definitely has been kind of a trend in some games where, again, that's where the inconsistencies seem to pop up, right? So that's definitely part of the conversations that we have.
I would imagine of the maddening things that you've seen so far at times, that has to be up there at the top, right near the top.
When you talk about the frustration, right? Those things are frustrating. But you know, again, I don't think there's anybody that can read something on the internet or at least in this building, read something on the internet they don't know. I mean, we all know that, right? The players know it, the coaches know that. And again, it goes back to being consistent and getting these things fixed, because it's, you know, we're all disappointed, we're all frustrated. But again, that's what you sign up for when you play this game. We got to go fix it, starting with me.
Coach, I'm just curious, what were your thoughts about that pass interference call this Century, right? Do you agree with the call?
Well, I don't really want to talk about officiating, but it was a close call, and they called it, and we got to live with it. Can't take it back.
Gene, just curious, after a home game, like what your process is, like do you head back up to your office and turn the tape on immediately? Do you go home, have a sandwich, go down to your cellar and don't come out for the rest of the night? Like in terms of
Sure,
back? Like,
sure.
are you doing it alone? Like, you know, are you taking 10 pages of notes? Just like, what do you do when the game ends and you're starting to get back into
Right.
dissecting it?
So when I leave here, I will grab something to eat, and then I'll go home and I'll watch the game very thoroughly that night. No matter how late it is, I'll watch it that night. I can't wait till the next morning. So I'll watch it that night, take notes, get up again in the morning, watch it again, then probably watch it about definitely a third time before we all get together as coaches and watch that together. So we'll watch it 3 or 4 times before we actually go meet with the players.
Gene, looking at the forecast, at least initially for this weekend, looks like it's probably going to be pretty rainy in Chapel Hill. Have you and the staff taken that into account yet, or are you sort of waiting to see what happens if the forecast changes in the next couple of days?
I'm glad you told me that because I haven't checked the forecast, so that's interesting, right? No, we have not really talked about that. Usually we wait till we get closer because, in my experience with weather people, they're not really the most accurate. So we'll just wait and kind of see as we get closer.
What are you doing to change the weather? What impact are you doing to twist the weather there?
Yeah.
All right, Gene.
Thanks, guys and ladies.
Thank you, Gene.
Thanks, Coach.
Appreciate it.